What if the most imaginative worlds of the 1980s weren't the ones we remember? What if true sci-fi brilliance flickered in forgotten reels buried by studio fear and box office chaos? From dystopian visions that warned the future to cosmic dreams that vanished in legal dust, these are the 12 1980s sci-fi movies no one remembers but you'll love now. Prepare for the danger, the beauty, and the silence of lost imagination. Number 12. The Last Starfighter, 1984. It was supposed to be a triumph of digital cinema. The Last Starfighter promised a new age where computers replaced models and dreams soared on pixels. But when it hit theaters, it barely made a sound. The story followed Alex Rogan, a trailer park kid recruited by aliens after beating an arcade game that was actually a test for intergalactic pilots. Audiences didn't know what to make of it. The computer graphics looked strange, almost unreal, in an age ruled by matte paintings and physical sets. Critics mocked its simplicity, while others whispered that studios feared the technology itself, that digital rendering would kill jobs and old Hollywood craft. Behind the scenes, production nearly collapsed when the rendering computers overheated under the film's demands. Crews worked overnight to keep the servers alive just to finish a single space battle. Decades later, filmmakers call it prophetic. Without it, there might be no Pixar, no digital revolution. The Last Starfighter vanished for years, but now it's studied as the movie that dared to dream beyond the stars before the world was ready. Number 11. Outland, 1981. Sean Connery in space should have been a blockbuster, but Outland turned into one of the decade's strangest flops. Set on a mining colony orbiting Jupiter, it reimagined High Noon as a corporate thriller. Connery played a marshal uncovering a deadly conspiracy where miners were overdosing on stimulants to increase productivity. Audiences expected lasers and aliens. Instead, they got corruption, claustrophobia, and silence. The studio panicked. Posters were reworked to emphasize action scenes that barely existed. Some executives feared it was too bleak to adult for a summer release. On set, tensions ran high. Connery argued over dialogue changes meant to soften his character. Director Peter Hyams fought to keep the grim tone but was overruled in editing. The final cut confused critics, who called it cold and mechanical. Years later, its legacy shifted. Outland is now hailed as a brutal space western, a warning about corporate exploitation and human decay. Its slow suffocation mirrors our own industrial fears, reminding us that space was never the final frontier. It was the next company town. Number 10. Lifeforce, 1985. Imagine a sci-fi epic that begins with astronauts discovering a derelict ship inside Halley's Comet and ends with London collapsing into vampiric chaos. That was Lifeforce. Directed by Tobe Hooper, fresh off Poltergeist, it should have been a sensation. Instead, it became one of canon film's most disastrous gambles. The plot mixed alien invasion, body possession, and cosmic energy theft. The studio wanted a blockbuster, but censors warned it was too graphic, too apocalyptic for mainstream release. Entire sequences were re-edited, cutting minutes of the comet discovery and London's destruction. Hooper's vision of drained souls wandering the city terrified test audiences. Critics dismissed it as madness, but fans saw something else, a film far ahead of its time, blending gothic horror and Cold War paranoia. Behind the camera, the production was chaos. Models caught fire effects, teams went unpaid, and Hooper was nearly removed mid-shoot. When it finally reached video shelves, Lifeforce found its audience, the cult crowd that adored its ambition and surreal energy. Today, it stands as a chaotic masterpiece, a film that dared to turn outer space into a spiritual nightmare. Its heart still beats in every ambitious sci-fi horror that followed, reminding us that sometimes the strangest films are the ones that truly live forever. Number 9. Enemy Mine, 1985. It was meant to unite audiences under the banner of brotherhood across the stars. Instead, Enemy Mine nearly bankrupted its studio. Set in a distant future where humans and an alien race called the Drax are at war, it told the story of a human pilot stranded on a barren planet with his alien enemy. Together, they had to survive the wasteland, forming a bond that defied hatred and fear. The production began with one director, Richard Longcrane, but after massive creative clashes and disastrous sets, he was fired. Wolfgang Petersen took over and reshot almost the entire movie, ballooning the budget to over $40 million, an enormous sum for the mid-80s. Executives panicked. Marketing teams did not know how to sell it. Was it a war movie, a friendship drama, or an alien epic? Early test screenings were brutal, with audiences confused by its slow pace and emotional tone. Critics mocked its sentimentality, calling it a misguided space fable. But over the years, the film found redemption. Its themes of empathy and racial unity spoke louder in a world still struggling with division. Now, Enemy Mine is recognized as a quiet masterpiece, a reminder that beneath alien skin, the human struggle remains the same. In an era obsessed with explosions, this film dared to speak about forgiveness, and that is why it still haunts the stars. Number 8. Starman, 1984. John Carpenter was the master of horror. Yet in 1984, he stunned everyone with a love story. Starman was tender, cosmic, and completely misunderstood. Jeff Bridges played an alien who takes the form of a widow's late husband after crashing to Earth. Karen Allen's grief and wonder drove the film as the two crossed America pursued by government agents. But behind the gentle romance lay chaos. The script had floated in development hell for years, originally intended as a darker alien invasion tale. When Carpenter took over, studio heads doubted his ability to handle emotion after his dark hits like The Thing. Marketing became a war. Columbia Pictures also had E.T. on their mind and feared comparisons. Executives softened trailers, cutting out Carpenter's signature tension to make it more family-friendly. Critics were divided. Some saw warmth, others boredom. Jeff Bridges earned an Oscar nomination, yet the film faded quietly, lost between blockbuster sci-fi and romantic drama. But time was kind to Starman. Its haunting score, its road movie melancholy, and its faith in human kindness gave it immortality. It proved that even in the cold vastness of space, love could still find a way home. Number 7. The Hidden, 1987. It began with a quiet promise, a low-budget sci-fi cop thriller that no one expected to survive. What came out was one of the most electrifying cult films of the 80s. The Hidden followed a body-hopping alien criminal tearing through Los Angeles, inhabiting human hosts and leaving chaos behind. An FBI agent joins forces with a mysterious partner to stop it, only to realize his partner might not be entirely human either. The film's tone was wild, half action, half horror, all adrenaline. Yet its violent energy scared the studio. New Line Cinema tried to tone down its darker scenes, fearing it would be branded as too disturbing for wide release. Behind the scenes, production raced against time. Practical effects failed mid-shoot. The alien puppet melted under the heat of the studio lights. Crews improvised with leftover materials from other horror sets. When it released, critics were stunned. Roger Ebert called it one of the best genre surprises of the decade. Still, it disappeared quickly, overshadowed by bigger sci-fi titles that same year. But The Hidden never truly died. On home video and late-night cable, it built a secret following. Fans drawn to its madness, its music, its fearless storytelling. It was gritty, unhinged, and ahead of its time. The kind of sci-fi film that refuses to be forgotten no matter how deep the vaults of the 80s try to bury it. Number 6. Saturn III, 1980. It was supposed to be sleek, futuristic, and romantic. Instead, Saturn III became one of the strangest disasters in sci-fi history. The film starred Kirk Douglas and Farrah Fawcett as lovers working on a remote space station experimenting to create food for Earth. When a replacement pilot arrives with a monstrous robot named Hector, everything collapses into madness. From the start, production was doomed. Director John Barry, a legendary production designer for Star Wars, was fired after clashes with Kirk Douglas only weeks into filming. Stanley Donen stepped in, but tension poisoned the set. Douglas refused to follow the script. Fawcett felt trapped in a role that made her uncomfortable, and critics later described the robot scenes as unintentionally comical. Censors fought over its tone. Some scenes were cut for being too disturbing, while others were trimmed for being too slow. The result was a confusing blend of psychological thriller and space melodrama that satisfied no one. Yet Saturn III refused to die. Decades later, audiences began to see its tragic beauty. The lonely isolation, the decaying romance, and the eerie mechanical dread. Its failures became its charm. In the end, Saturn III stood as a warning that even the brightest stars can burn too close to their creations and be consumed by them. Number 5. The Quiet Earth, 1985. While Hollywood filled screens with aliens and lasers, New Zealand made silence its weapon. The Quiet Earth was a haunting story about the end of everything. Scientist Zach Hobson wakes one morning to find every human on Earth gone. No war, no disease, just emptiness. As he roams the deserted world, he struggles with madness, guilt, and the terrifying thought that he might have caused it. Shot on a tiny budget, it became one of the most atmospheric post-apocalyptic films ever made. But distributors didn't know how to sell it. Without famous actors or explosions, studios ignored it. It vanished from theaters almost instantly. Behind the scenes, director Jeff Murphy clashed with producers who demanded a happier ending. He refused. The result was an ambiguous finale that confused audiences but haunted critics. When it hit VHS, it found its cult. Viewers debated its final image for decades, a surreal shot of a man standing before a new sun on an alien horizon. The Quiet Earth was not about destruction, but about loneliness and guilt. It whispered what most sci-fi films shouted. Sometimes the loudest story is told in silence. Number 4. Night of the Comet, 1984. When the world ended in neon colors, no one took it seriously. Night of the Comet was marketed as a campy apocalypse, but beneath the pink glow and pop music was something darker. The story followed two valley girls who wake up after a mysterious comet wipes out most of humanity, leaving behind only dust and zombies. It was a satire, a horror, and a dream rolled into one. The studio didn't understand it. Test screenings made executives nervous. Was it a teen comedy or a horror? They slashed its budget and cut promotional materials to avoid confusion. Director Tom Eberhardt fought to keep its tone intact. On set, the crew built Los Angeles to look like a ghost town using early morning shoots and silent streets before sunrise. It gave the film its haunting emptiness. Critics didn't get it, but audiences loved it on video. It became a cult treasure, especially among fans who saw in its heroines something rare for the 80s, strong young women surviving the apocalypse with humor and grit. Its pastel wasteland predicted the future of pop horror aesthetics that dominate screens today. Night of the Comet was the end of the world painted in pink and blue, proof that even extinction could look beautiful under the glow of a dying sky. Number 3. Memoirs of an Invisible Man, 1992. Yes, technically it arrived just after the 80s, but its production and spirit were pure Reagan-era science fiction chaos. Memoirs of an Invisible Man was supposed to reinvent the genre, mixing corporate satire, romance, and cutting-edge effects. Instead, it vanished in plain sight. Chevy Chase played a stock analyst who becomes invisible after a scientific accident and must flee from government agents who want to weaponize his condition. What began as a serious sci-fi thriller descended into studio warfare. John Carpenter was hired to direct, but clashed endlessly with Chase, who demanded control over tone and final cut. Chase wanted comedy, Carpenter wanted realism. The result was a film trapped between two worlds. Behind the scenes, the invisibility effects pushed technology to its limits. Computer-generated shots were blended with physical tricks, mirrors, and wires. The costs skyrocketed. Warner Brothers lost faith and cut marketing. When it finally released, audiences were baffled, expecting slapstick but getting melancholy. Critics shredded it, calling it lifeless. Chase's career never fully recovered. Yet years later, it gained quiet respect as a vision of loneliness and alienation disguised as fantasy. Memoirs of an Invisible Man stands today as an eerie prophecy about the invisible man behind fame, how power and technology can erase a person, not just from sight, but from memory. Number 2. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension, 1984. This was the 80s turned inside out. Buckaroo Banzai was a surgeon, rock star, physicist, and superhero all in one, and his movie was pure madness. Jeff Goldblum and Peter Weller led a cast of cult legends in a film that mashed every genre into one. Alien invasions from another dimension, government conspiracies, guitar solos, and samurai battles all exploded on screen with no mercy for logic. Studio executives panicked. The script made no sense to them, and test audiences walked out confused. Marketing couldn't summarize it, so posters used cryptic slogans like "Remember Buckaroo Banzai, across the eighth dimension." Behind the scenes, director W.D. Rister fought to keep his surreal vision intact as the studio demanded cuts and rewrites. Key storylines were removed, leaving viewers lost in chaos. When it flopped, executives blamed fans for not being smart enough to get it. But on home video, a new audience rose, people who adored its strangeness, its fearless humor, its rejection of normal storytelling. Today, it's considered a cornerstone of cult cinema influencing shows like Doctor Who and Guardians of the Galaxy. Buckaroo Banzai didn't fail. It escaped. And in doing so, it became exactly what it always wanted to be, a movie from another dimension. Number 1, Tron, 1982. No list of forgotten sci-fi deserves to end without the digital dream that started it all. Tron was a film that rewired cinema and terrified Hollywood in the process. When Disney released it, the world wasn't ready for computers as art. Jeff Bridges played a hacker trapped inside a digital world where programs had souls and neon ruled. The story was simple, but the vision was revolutionary. The animation was unlike anything ever seen. It used computer-generated imagery combined with live-action sequences processed through multiple exposures. The result looked alien. Critics didn't understand it. Some called it cold and mechanical. Others said it wasn't even cinema. Inside, Disney executives panicked at the cost and complexity. Many wanted it shelved. Technicians built the images on computers so large they needed separate air-conditioned rooms just to keep them running. It flopped at the box office. The studio buried it. But over the years, the film became legend, the first to truly enter cyberspace before the internet even existed. Every virtual world, every video game, and every digital epic that followed owes something to Tron. It was mocked, then misunderstood, now immortal. Tron dared to imagine humanity inside the machine, and in that glowing grid, it found eternity. These 12 films were never meant to disappear. They were too strange, too risky, too far ahead of their time, yet they carried the spirit of an age that dreamed beyond stars and circuits. Which of these forgotten visions haunts you most? Which deserves resurrection? Like this video, share it with another dreamer and subscribe, because the past still has galaxies left to explore.